Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Got to be honest, everything you do is communication. Everything you, even communicating with yourself, but connecting with others. And even though we have tons of technology in our lives now, written communication is still king. How you doing with that? We want to help you out with that. I'm sure that you could probably use a little bit of help in terms of even writing emails at work. You really want to do focused emails, resumes, proposals. She's somebody that helps people with this all the time as a writing coach. She is also an author, best-selling, by the way, Amazon. Just going to throw that in there. NYU professor, and so great to have her back with us. Learned a lot last time. She has a method that she's perfected as well to help with your communication. Marilyn Horowitz back on the program. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
You run so much deeper than I ever imagined. When we first met, fantastic. Writing coach. I believe we can all use some help in terms of communicating better, more clearer. In my world, we call it lasering. Just laser it down, get to the point. You run deeper, though, from an energetic level, from a psychological level. There's a lot more going on here than just Marilyn helping you write a little bit better. And I appreciate that. I just wanted to get that out there because you're not like any other writing coach I've ever spoken to. You're very different.
Thank you.
So today, we're looking at improving our communication at work. Where do you want to begin with that?
Well, I think that, it's important to understand that we have all become writers because of the modern technology. We text, we email, and so our need to be more connected is ever more important, especially anybody who's written an email that was received wrong or a text that was taken the wrong way will attest. Mm-hmm. And so the reason that a lot of these problems happen is not because of anything that you would think. It happens because the person who is sending the email actually feels that way and is not able to cover up their feelings because they're not in tune with that. And the thing about writing is that it reveals much more than talking. Because there it is, it can be reread, right? And so on and so forth. And so you have to consider the effect of what you write, but not from the outer way. In other words, no one is fooled by anything. If anybody is fooled by anything, it's because they have an investment emotionally for not seeing the truth. That's the way this works. When we're in the jungle, if we really recognize how much danger we're in, we're going to freeze. We're not going to be able to function. We're going to be too scared. So this part of our brain called the venula comes in and says, hey, it's not that bad, right? I can put up with this. I can put up with this horrible job. I can, put up with hiding behind this tree for a year so I don't get hit by the bear. I can do this. And the answer is maybe you shouldn't, maybe. And so part of the reason that you think I run deep is that I understand how deeply writing affects people. It's not a casual thing. So even when I talk to ChatGPT, which I use, selectively, I always say please and thank you, because people say it's not sentient. Well, it mimics us so closely that you have to really wonder. In other words, how many of us really have a soul? How many of us are not just data, monitors? Or how much of us are not mirroring this false personality self because we've lost ourselves inside? We may as well be, a machine.
So a couple of things to identify here. I'm seeing a picture now of communication, written communication, where because you can text, because you can just type a post, we've gotten a lot more casual in that. Part of that is a good thing, but on the flip side, when you press the button, submit, send, post, you're broadcasting, and to your point, you put it out there. It's one thing to have a conversation with somebody and then think to yourself, well, what did they say? Let me go back on that. You have it already written. You can go back on it. And when you talk about ChatGPT, I do the same exact thing. Please and thank you. And I look at it this way. It's the energy exchange. The energy exchange. And here's an example and how I prove to myself how this works. I have a junky Jeep. I just use it for kayaking, hauling garbage, things like that. It's 25 years old. I always joke my Jeep is in hospice and it's still running. There's been some times where it would break down. A belt would break. I'm like, and what would I do? If like, you piece of junk, the middle of traffic, like, and I don't want to get mad. I would, just address the Jeep in a negative way, fix the problems, and now I'm grateful. We drive somewhere, I go kayaking, I say to my Jeep, we had a great day. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
That's it.
It's been running great. No issues whatsoever. And I'm convinced it's the energy you put in.
Well, sure. People have this mistaken, that all of our culture and religion separates us and creates a hierarchy, between animals and plants and even, people who do service jobs and us and all this kind of stuff. And we all imagine that we're separate. And then, in the self-esteem model, it's our goal. We're separate entities. We have to find ourselves and all this nonsense. And it's misinterpreted. That's not true. But on an energetic level, I mean, physics knows this. Everything is one throbbing piece of energy. So, and why wouldn't you want to know this? Well, because then if you're a greedy politician and you want to take people's money, you couldn't do it because you would realize that you're basically biting your own hand. So, all of the dangerous thing about reason, as it's called, is that you can rationalize almost any horrible behavior that will support your greed. And, we do this. I mean, if people understood that you are your unique personality, regardless of what you do, you can't be anybody else. Everybody else is taken, right? And so if we didn't have so much early self-betrayal, from the moment you're born, either you're going to cry or you're going to get fed. Everything is a choice. Everything is choosing the lesser of two evils. That is my definition of life, for better or for worse. And it can be good or bad. Now, the fact that you apologize to your Jeep makes me want to be your friend, because that to me is a class act. Most people treat animals, most other people, and things like they're just things. Well, they're imbued with your spirit. You're quite right. You're basically apologizing to yourself for the Jeep. So, and when you're doing communication, you have to understand that it's a feedback loop. And that's why the practice is very powerful. So the practice, as you know, is the hug, right? Where you get yourself grounded, somatic practice. And then you imagine the word of the day when we're doing it. What we're doing, like we're having a meeting or something, it's very useful. So we would get back to it on. Steve and I did the hug. And I said, Steve, give me a word that would describe how you would like our workshop or sort of webinar to go. And he sort of received it for a minute, quiet, took a breath. And then he said, insight. And I thought, perfect. And are we not really on track? And are we not really connected?
I feel we are.
The practice works.
And I see things in even a more different way in terms of how you work with someone, because it's not about the words. It's also about the intent. The intent. You could just coach somebody on grammar, proper setup, ending, all, a million different things. But there's more going on there than just that.
Yes.
Where do we begin if somebody wants to improve the way, even if it's emails, whatever it might be? The intent needs to be there. Gratitude needs to be there. Side note, when I return an email, I usually write thank you. Those are the first two words, because there's usually something to thank somebody for. I don't just look for it. It's just staring me in the face. I just look through, a different lens. But right away, you're starting off with positivity and gratitude. I don't think it gets better than that.
Well, I have my own opinion about the word gratitude, which I will share. I think appreciation would be a much more powerful substitute, because gratitude suggests a hierarchy. Because it's connected, with religion. Oh, thank you, dear God, and whatever, all that kind of stuff, which is not bad, but to me, it relieves you of a responsibility that you should have to take. When you offer appreciation, I appreciate you, and I love the fact that this has now become a current term. Everywhere I go, people say, I appreciate you. I appreciate that. It means that we're in a partnership. Appreciate it suggests that energetic, connection that you're suggesting, whereas gratitude implies supplication. Now, again, I'm a word person. And I really think that if you say thank you, you're already 100% better than most people. But I'm just making a point here that is part of what I do, which is take responsibility. Take
Mm.
responsibility. You got yourself this job, you're sitting there with this email, you're afraid to write it. Take responsibility. I got this job, I have to write this difficult email. I'm not very good at email, which is what everybody tells themselves. Stop doing that. It doesn't matter whether you're good or bad, you have to do it. So get over it. Because again, this is all part of what I teach. In other words, stop being so self-referential. Do you understand that as you're, it's like, asking the pencil if it's having an emotional problem. In this case, you're just a pencil. You're just the instrument of your intention, but use your language. And that's the best way. You just say, okay, I know all that chatter. I've been in therapy for 10 years, like most people. I read all those self-help books. I listen to these podcasts. Today, I'm going to click it off, and I'm going to draw a line in the sand behind me. I'm going to do the hug and understand I'm all I got. And I can either go forward, or I can stay stuck, or I can go backwards. That's it. Those are my three choices. And if I'm going to go forward, I need to get over myself and say, okay, what can I do right now to solve this problem? That should be in everybody's top shelf of questions. Every day I get up and I say, okay, how can I improve what I'm doing? As much as people say thank you, I say that. And I recommend it. How can I improve what I'm doing? It's not that what I'm doing isn't good. It's just, once you get this spiritual hunger, you thirst for, some kind of gratification, which in people like me is achievement. What happened next? So if you are willing to take this kind of tough love stance for yourself while giving yourself real physical love, which is what you really need, right? And not from someone else, then you can say, okay, I understand. I've got all this baggage. I have all these feelings. I have a history with this person, all this stuff that you have. And just say, I'm just going to, like my phone, I'm going to turn my phone off and I'm going to put that over here. And for this 5 or 10 minutes, I need to compose this email. I'm going to do the following. I'm going to give myself a hug and remind myself that everything I say about myself, I believe. So maybe saying I'm not good at emails is not very useful at this moment. You have to have this conversation with yourself. Say, okay, I'm going to reframe that. I'm not usually good at emails, but this time I'm going to do pretty good. That's what you say. You're not trying to be positive. You're just trying to give yourself a possibility. And then you focus on the problem at hand. And again, when you do the word of the day, you're in this thing, you close your eyes, and you say, okay, self, give me a word that describes what the problem is. Why am I hesitating? All right. And if you sit there for a couple of minutes, it's very uncomfortable. You have to be willing to squirm. This is very, very hard work, but very easy when you're done. And you'll get a word like resentment will come up. Something really significant will come up. You go, no, you blah, blah, blah. Then you have to cut that off and say, no, if that's coming through this channel in my head, it must be true. So what's the problem here? The problem is you're afraid to write the email because you really want to slap this guy.
Well, ultimately, doesn't it come back to the F word? 4 letters, fear. Isn't that many times holding us back? Well, either fear of how I'm going to write it. If you have that thought that I'm not great at emails, you have a fear of that. You have a fear of the repercussion of confronting somebody within a challenging email you need to write. Do you think it always, most often comes back to fear?
I think so, but there's a way to work with fear that people don't use. That really needs to be done. But you say, this is one thing that drives me crazy about all of the current mores. Okay, fear is a biological emotion. All right. You have fear because you have something to fear. And all this stuff about getting over your fear is ridiculous. Now, you can distinguish, the way that you have to make a distinction is, am I having a historical fear, which is a very different conversation, or am I having fear about this very thing that I'm doing? Or am I having a self-referencing fear of failure, or am I having a fear because maybe I shouldn't write this email? Maybe I really shouldn't write it. You see this, you have to, so fear has to be, fear is not just a blanket thing. Fear is complex because one part of our mind doesn't understand time, right? The creative part of our mind that writes emails doesn't understand time. And the part of us that needs to write it is in time to protect ourselves and keeps ourselves safe. So, it's trying to do, you're dancing with someone, they're doing the boogaloo and you're doing the tango. That's basically what's going on inside. And so you just have to go, okay, this is how it is. Life is a series of lesser of two evils. I have two choices. I can either continue to suffer and waste a lot of time, or I can just take a pass at it. And if my fear is that I might offend the person, maybe I shouldn't send the email. Maybe that's what has to be looked at. and take back the power. It's a difference between gratitude and appreciation. Maybe my fear is accurate, right? Or maybe I need to send a very different kind of email that I first felt when I sat down. Sometimes you get mad and you blab things out. Never send those.
Oh, yeah.
But if you come up with something where suddenly you're feeling very uncomfortable, we, in order to survive, and most of us are very decent people, we put up with a lot of stuff that we really shouldn't put up with. Okay, and not that the other person is doing it, is we accept the deal. We make a deal and we accept it, right? A lot of times we have no choice. You got to work for a boss. I mean, it's just, we have to get over this self-referencing like it has anything to do with ourselves. You do what you got to do to survive. You have a family, you're going to take a job, you're going to work it, okay? Whether you should have had the family or not, that's a whole other conversation, but you did. And there you are. And, you just got fired from one thing, and the best thing you can do is something that's not quite at your level. Okay. If you don't take it personally and you understand, this is the basic things. The way to succeed in business is to tell yourself the truth, which is, I always do the best I can do under the circumstances. And that cuts fear.
It goes back to what my mom told me when I was a kid: do your best. You can't expect any more, and you can't expect any more from yourself. Marilyn, are there tips you can share when we're writing something, whatever it may be, or we can just make it that email? Are there some things, we're talking about the mindset, we're talking about the intention, everything that's holding us back. My hands are at the keyboard. Any thoughts?
First thing is take your hands off the keyboard and get a piece of paper. Okay, that's the first thing. They've done many studies, and when you type, you're using the math part of your brain, and when you write, you're using both parts of your brain, because the physical is again long neuroscience conversation about how moving your hand, whether it's this way or that way, and trains your brain in a different way and different things. It's very important to understand.
By the way, I want to add, I'm right on your page with that. I've seen the research. I will admit, when I'm typing an email, I don't do that. Many times I don't. I just want to get it done. However, if you want true authenticity and true thoughts, nothing gets better than that mind-hand connection. And plus, I feel when you write it, you make it true. Like it is true. It's like,
for better or for worse, there's a wonderful book that I once read that says your body believes everything you say. That's quite a book. And every time you tell yourself you're not good at emails, you're going to make sure that you remain bad at emails or whatever. The basic concept is there's nothing wrong with typing emails that are of general nature. Okay. And the same thing with writing. If you're just, if you have to write an article or something, there's no reason why you necessarily need to do this. But my experience, having done this for 25 years, is that the two sides of the brain, you get a much better result quicker if you engage both sides of the brain as opposed to just using the typing brain. So the idea of doing the hug somatically connects you to both parts of your brain, and then you can type away, But when you have to solve a problem, right? Now, remember, we're talking about this idea that we are so incredibly societally inculcated that we don't even know the solutions that we pick are ours or not. We're just, do your best, whatever it is. We're told all these things. And my approach is take a minute and say, okay, what am I really trying to say? This is what people don't do. They think they have to write about it or something like that. The answer is no. Again, another book that never had to be read, great title. It says, if you can talk, you can write. Okay. And it's true in a way. So I've had many of my students learn to dictate. And I frequently will dictate into my email because it understands me better. And then I print it out, and then I clean it up, and then I send it. Because that process of dictating is a fast way to get in the zone and so on and so forth. But if you are a writer, the thing to do is sit down. Okay, you have to say, okay, I'm going to write a chapter of my book. I'm going to, write a scene in the screenplay. I'm going to write a poem. I'm going to write a proposal. I'm going to write a, important cover letter for, an offer that I'm making or whatever. And if you just take a minute and you give yourself a hug and say, okay, this is the question. What is the experience I want the receiver to have? This is the best way to do it. I call it working audience first, right? So first draft is, if you're doing something creative, you do it for yourself. So you scribble and whatever. But when you have to perform, which most of us do, you have 15 minutes to get this thing out there, whether it's a book, a proposal, whatever. do it this way. You say, okay, I'm gonna reverse engineer this. What is the result I want my my receiver to have? So in this case, your word suggested that you wanted to gain insight from the podcast, and that's the way to do it. So
Hmm.
if you're writing a book or you're writing a book, you say, okay, I want people to understand how much they love each other in this scene.
Hmm. It's interesting. I never thought of it that way. Reverse engineer it. What's the end result? Work your way back.
Yeah, it's a giant dub once you have it. Because it's very simple. So, your whatever the project is, the proposal, you want people to agree with it, give you money, whatever you're looking for, without making them feel that they're being manipulated.
Hmm.
Right. And, we all have our areas of extra. I've worked on so many different projects. So one thing I can say is that when you're writing a proposal or something, if it's appropriate, not always, not when you're trying to, sell an index fund or something, but if you want to get something or trying to get people to sign up for the church social or, give money for something, start with a story. It's so simple, but we don't do it because we're afraid of failure. And what everybody wants, and you notice everything now is geared toward this, all the social media, so people talk about themselves, in a more honest way than they used to, which I consider dishonest, personally, most of the time. They've done all kinds of studies. I think there's a New York senator who always referenced this sort of home style farming couple. I heard this story, I forget who it was. And they found out that this couple never existed. They were imaginary friends that don't exist. You know, so I don't know how I feel about that. It's okay when you're five, to have an imaginary friend, but I think when you grow up, you should try to get real ones. And
What do you think about this? And you said before, if you're in that moment of an email or some kind of written communication, don't send it right away. I put it through the filter. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind?
I think that's wonderful. You definitely could teach a class of this. You really know.
I just learned from people like you. I don't take credit for any of this. It's the insight from people that know how to do this and knew how to do it effectively.
But it's putting it into practice. I think that that's 100% of the thing. So the idea is that my approach to this is that if you want to be a better person, forget being a better writer. You get a hold of this technique, you watch one of the webinars or you find me somewhere, and you say to yourself, it's true. They've done studies. Kids need to be touched 12 times a day in a positive way to feel really received. So we're adults, we probably need more, but we probably would settle for half, right? So, because we settle, that's
Sure.
all equals settle, right? And so the idea is, okay, so let's go back to that. Now, what constitutes a touch? That's what so I have a friend who does this all the time. And he used to be wringing his hands, like, oh, what's wrong? And I said, well, what if you imagine that you were plugging into a socket? What if you change that gesture? And when you do it, you make a conscious effort to say, no, that's not me worrying, that's me connecting. I'm going to do this, right? It's called entrainment. You can change most of your habits by changing your behavior. And it's really the only way. You have to behave differently. It doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters except what you do. And so when you sit down to do a creative project, you need to notice what you're doing. And you just say, well, I don't have to, I got to get this thing done. I'm not going to analyze all the things that I do that make me feel this way, but I'm going to acknowledge that I have some habitual pattern, which I associate with fear of completing this task. And what's again, we have two parts. We have this thing I call the biological imperative, which is our brain. The reptile brain, which basically says, no, don't change. Like, when you go to therapy, it's like, why don't you change? We don't change because that part of you is going, hey, you're still alive. Stop complaining.
Yeah.
You want to be happy? What is that? That might be dangerous.
Because you
Right?
might have to make a change to be happy, and we don't want to make any changes because things are cool here, things are safe.
You're
Right?
Yeah. So we have to take that into consideration. And we have to respect that part of ourselves instead of doing all this nonsense of pretending it's not there, overcoming it, working it through. It's not going to get worked through. It is there to protect you, but it has not evolved. You can reason with it. And that part of you will start to notice that when you do the hug, all the systems in your body are better. You are more healthy. You are more likely to stay alive. And you do that for 30 days or so, and that part of you wakes up, and you'll see it's so much easier to get in that state. It goes, hey, I don't have to repress this. It's better. It's helping me do my job. Why didn't I think of this before?
So we're just about out of time. I want to ask you this. How
Sure.
many times would you suggest doing the hug?
I think you should do the hug when you get up, before you get out of bed. I think you should do the hug before you go to sleep. And I think that you should do the hug one other time during the day when you're feeling a little stressed or disconnected. 3 times a day.
How interesting that when we were children, typically, for many of us, what did we get before we went to bed?
No.
A hug. How do we connect with you, Marilyn? What's the best way if somebody's looking to try and figure this all out, improve not only themselves, but the way that they communicate and write? How do we find you?
Well, my website is marilynhorowitz.com. It's easy. I have a book that I wrote recently that's called The Word of the Day, Transform Your Writing in 15 Minutes a Day, which contains the written part of the technique and a journal. It's available on Amazon. And then if you want to see the results of this, my new novel is called Bad Girl Pie. It was just published. And it's definitely the product of my doing the word of the day for a long time. And then I also have a free webinar that I give every 2 weeks. The next one I think is on the 9th, or I think it's Wednesday the 9th, in which we do the practice. And it's free. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love your approach. And I love your straightforward mentality, even on your website. It says, I'm going to read it verbatim. Cut through the crap. Let's get that done. Congratulations on the book. Doing great. As we said, bestseller in a category. And you're available to not only just help improve communication, but literally change lives. Everything we're talking about is principles that you're going to get from a coach, therapist. It's all right here and very easy to understand.
I was a change agent, you know what I mean? And I'm a doorway. I mean, when people meet me, I help them, go through things.
Thank you for the insight today, by the way.
Oh, thank you. And I'll see you next week.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.